Almost every Azure AI project in 2024 and 2025 starts the same way. An enterprise wants a chatbot that answers questions over its own documents. The reference architecture is a retrieval augmented generation or RAG pipeline. But teams burn weeks wiring services in the wrong order and then wonder why answers are wrong and costs are unpredictable. In the next 5 minutes, we'll dissect one realistic Azure RAG design, trace a single request through it, expose the failure modes, and finish with a clear ranking of what you should actually build first. Picture the architecture as layers. At the foundation sits your data, documents in Azure Blob Storage. Above that, an ingestion and chunking layer that splits documents and calls an embedding model to turn each chunk into a vector. Those vectors land in Azure AI Search, which is your retrieval layer and vector store. On top sits Azure OpenAI Service, hosting both the embedding model and the chat completion model like GPT-4o. The top layer is your orchestration code, often Azure App Service or Azure Container Apps, that ties retrieval and generation together and enforces auth. Each layer depends on the one beneath it. Now follow a single question. The user sends a query to your orchestration app, which first authenticates them through Microsoft Entra ID. The app calls the embedding model to vectorize the question. It sends that vector to Azure AI Search, asking for the top, say, 5 most relevant chunks using hybrid search, which blends vector similarity with keyword matching. Those chunks come back, and the app stitches them into a prompt as grounding context. That full prompt goes to the chat model, which generates an answer constrained to the retrieved text. Finally, the app returns the answer plus citations back to the user. Retrieval happens before generation, always. Here's where these systems fail, and almost none of it is the model's fault. The most common failure is bad retrieval. If your chunks are too big, too small, or poorly indexed, the search returns irrelevant context and the model confidently hallucinates. Second, token limits. Stuff too many chunks into the prompt and you blow the context window or your cost per call. Third, rate limits. Azure OpenAI enforces tokens per minute quotas, and under load you'll see 429 errors unless you've provisioned throughput or added retry with backoff. Fourth, stale data, because the index only reflects the last ingestion run. Most quality complaints trace back to retrieval, not the language model. The trade-off architects argue about most is build speed versus control. On one side, Azure AI Foundry, formerly Azure AI Studio, with prompt flow and its built-in vector index gets you a working prototype in days, with evaluation and deployment baked in. On the other side, assembling Azure AI Search, Azure OpenAI, and your own orchestration code gives you full control over chunking, hybrid search tuning, caching, and cost, but it's far more to own and operate. My rule of thumb: prototype in Foundry to validate the use case, then graduate to the explicit composed architecture once you need to tune retrieval quality and control spend at scale. So what do you build first? Resist starting with model selection or fancy prompts. Priority 1 is your data pipeline and chunking strategy, because retrieval quality caps everything downstream. Priority 2 is an evaluation harness, even a simple set of question and expected answer pairs, so you can measure groundedness instead of guessing. Priority 3 is security and identity, using Entra ID and private endpoints from day 1 rather than bolting them on later. Only then, priority 4, do you tune the model temperature and prompt template. Notice the model is fourth, not first. Teams that invert this order ship demos that collapse in production. To recap, an Azure RAG app is layers of data, retrieval through Azure AI Search, generation through Azure OpenAI, and orchestration on top. Requests embed, retrieve, then generate. Most failures come from retrieval, not the model. And the priority order is data first, evaluation second, security third, model tuning last. Your one concrete takeaway: before you write a single prompt, build a small evaluation set of real questions and known good answers and measure retrieval quality against it. That dataset becomes your regression test for every change. And because Azure AI service names, quotas, and pricing shift often, verify the current Azure documentation before you commit your design. If this helped, do me a favor, hit the like button, subscribe, and tap the bell so you don't miss the next one. See you in the next video.